He said it loud enough for the whole table to hear. "Don't mind her, she's just army trash. My father. At my wedding." The words hung heavy, riding on the sound of clinking glasses and forced laughter. I didn't flinch. I didn't blink. I simply lowered my champagne flute and waited. And then my groom, calm, steady, set his glass down and said, "Sir, that trash is my commanding officer." The room fell silent. My father choked on his wine, red staining his shirt. Gasps rippled across the guests. That was the moment his empire of cruelty began to collapse. Growing up, I was his disappointment. Too stubborn, too outspoken. Too much like a son, he'd say, but never in praise. When I enlisted, he laughed. "You'll come crawling back. Girls like you don't last." When I made rank, he sneered. "Uniform or not, you're still nothing." And when I came home on leave, his favorite toast was always the same: "To my mistake of a daughter." For years I swallowed the bitterness, telling myself duty meant silence. But silence rots you from the inside. I didn't know it then, but I was already planning. It started small, watching his patterns. How he boasted in public but begged in private. How he called me useless, yet used my name when he needed credibility in his business circles. How every insult was a thread in the rope he didn't realize he was tying around his own neck. By the time I met Michael, my groom, I knew exactly what I would do. I didn't tell Michael the full truth at first, only fragments. Enough for him to see the scars, but not the depth of the wounds. But he saw. He always saw. And when he found out who my father was, the man who mocked me, disowned me, humiliated me, Michael didn't run. He just nodded once. Then, let's give him a show he'll never forget. The wedding was the stage. The guest list? Mine. The seating arrangements? Mine. Every detail orchestrated so that my father would believe he was still in control. He thought it was his event to flaunt his wealth, his chance to display the power of his name. He had no idea it was my battlefield. The ceremony passed without incident. The vows, the rings, the kiss. He smiled through it all, pretending to bless what he'd always cursed. But the reception? That was when he couldn't resist. Wine in his hand, pride in his voice, he leaned over to a table of investors and said it again. The words that had haunted me since childhood. "She's army trash." I felt every eye turn toward me, and I let them, because the trap was already set. Michael's response wasn't rehearsed. It didn't need to be. He just spoke the truth. "Sir, that trash is my commanding officer." The shock hit him first, then the guests. The investors he wanted to impress suddenly looked at me differently, not as the failure he painted, but as the leader who commanded respect, the woman he could never control. His laughter died in his throat. His power died in that room. I didn't stop there. The next morning, the papers ran with the story. Photos of him mid-choke, headlines praising the bride who outranked her groom, who commanded soldiers and silence in the same breath. The investors pulled out of his deals. His credibility dissolved. The man who thrived on belittling me was suddenly the punchline of his own downfall. And I didn't have to shout. I didn't have to lift a hand. I just stood still while the truth devoured him. Weeks later, he showed up at my door. Not in a suit, not in pride, just a man, hunched, desperate. "You humiliated me," he whispered. "No," I said. "You humiliated yourself. I just let the world see it. Now, when people ask me if it was worth it, if revenge tasted as sweet as they imagine, I tell them the truth. It wasn't sweet. It was clean. It was the silence after years of shouting, the calm after the storm he created in me. He called me trash. But on my wedding day, in front of everyone he sought to impress, he learned what I really was: unbreakable, unreachable, untouchable, and he'll never forget it.